Welcome to this Holistic Herbalism course. My name is Tanya Magdalene, and as a master herbalist, I will be guiding you through the next 3-4 hours of training materials that we have. To truly work with herbs, you need to understand that every living thing on our earth is a sentient living being that is here to work with us, to live, to clean our air, to clean our soils, to purify our water, to keep us well and healthy, and to be part of our food chain. Our food chain is an interesting word, and perhaps a more apt word should be food circle. And our plants and herbs, and remember herbs is the generic name we give to all plants in the plant kingdom, plants and trees. And they are an important part of that food circle too. So there are, as you're aware, nutrients in the soil which feed the plants. The plants which feed the animals and the humans, and which are then ultimately returned to the earth so that the microbes can break them down to return them to soil as nutrients. If you think about it, it really is a beautiful planet that we live on, where every aspect of life supports each other. Our plants and herbs, however, are so much more than green things that grow for man's consumption. They live and breathe and support each other as we do. They have feelings, believe it or not, and respond to the energy of all that is around them, whether that is the magnetic pull of the moon, a kind word, and yes, they really do respond to our words, or whether that is from the electromagnetic frequency waves being produced from the internet devices or from the magnetic grid of the earth that we have around us. For those looking beyond just the physical aspects of our herb kingdom, we can look at them in some way as having their own herb guardians who watch over the plants and interact with the planets and us, having a part in the divine mission of bringing healing to the planet. In this course, we will look at the ancient magic of their use in medicines, which also, believe it or not, meant knowing as a holistic herbalist, you would have to know some astrology, some alchemy, some philosophy, as well as being an adept gardener and a chemist. In this holistic herbalist course, you will gain a deeper understanding of the plant soul and what it means to work with them on this level. It is a journey that dates back 70,000 years ago to ancient Egypt, to the Greek gods, Hippocrates, the planets, the elemental kingdom, the druids, the pagan sacred earth festivals, folklore, plant consciousness and plant emotions. Not only that, we will focus on 28 herbs from our beautiful herb kingdom and look into detail at the potentials for healing that these bring. And if that isn't enough for you, there is even a bit of chemistry for those with a scientific brain. But don't worry, I've made it easy to understand so that I can understand it. So let's look at what holistic herbalism actually is. What is holistic herbalism? The art of healing comes from nature, not from the physician. Therefore, the physician must start from nature with an open mind. Paracelsus. Holistic herbalism is about understanding the bigger picture of the plants. It is about understanding the soul quality of our plants and the folklore that surrounds them. Is folklore just a story, or is it a truth told and passed down through the ages by folk? Folklore is described as the traditional beliefs, legends, customs, etc. of a people or law of people. Holistic herbalism is an ancient knowledge That was the remit of the wise healer in the woods, known as herbcraft or the cunning arts. And this knowledge, which is still held and used by shamans and many other indigenous cultures, and of course our holistic herbalists, was and is of the ancient power behind the healing abilities of our plants. In holistic herbalism, a person or animal, because we can help animals with herbs, is seen as a whole person, and the whole person is taken into consideration. Their mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being. Neither is distinct from the other. Modern medicine treats symptoms with a tablet that can produce other symptoms, whereas herbalistic remedies support not only existing symptoms, but they also support our general well-being. For example, dandelion, which I consider to be the god of all herbs, can be used to help with swelling, but at the same time helps to strengthen the liver and kidneys on a physical level. But did you know that it is ruled by Jupiter, which is the thinking planet, and is also used to increase psychic abilities by broadening the upper mind? Robin Bennett, in his book The Gift of Healing Herbs, describes it this way. Your immune systems are comprised of all parts of the ecosystem you know as yourself, and include not only every part of you, from your conscious and subconscious thoughts to your physical body symptoms, but also how you live and function in relationship with the larger ecosystems that exist around you. A holistic herbalist needs to study the whole-istic, can you see what I did with the word there, aspects of their plant cabinet, because these green warriors are so much more than a tasty salad. The ancient law of plant healing. Plant the love of the holy ones within your spirit. Don't give your heart to anything but the love of those whose hearts are glad. Rumi. In ancient Celtic law, the book Din Senshas, meaning Law of Places, talks of the history of healing herbs in Celtic traditions. It was originally handed down through oral tradition, as was most of our history. To protect its knowledge, it was written down in the 9th century. Dian Checht, who is their druidic god of healing, bore a son, Miach, who was a more powerful healer than his father. His father, who was jealous of his son's gift, decided he would try to kill him. Charming, huh? His first 3 attempts failed, as his son cured himself. But finally, after cutting him through the skull and cutting his brain in 2, his son finally died. You can't have a good Celtic law story without some blood and violence. His sister Ahmed, struck with grief, buried her brother. As she cried over the grave, her tears fell. When her tears touched the freshly dug earth, she was amazed to see 865 herbs grow up out of the grave from each of Miach's 865 joints and sinews. Ahmed carefully gathered all the herbs and arranged them on her cloak in the shape of her brother's body. She laid them where they had grown from his body in the grave. The dandelion grew from his head area, so she knew this herb was meant for illnesses around that area, and so on, until she had completed the whole cataloguing of the herbs and their wide range of beneficial efforts, which were felt to be so effective that they would cure every illness in Ireland. However, her father, Dian Checht, found out, and enraged with jealousy, he kicked the herbs off the cloak, confusing their positions, and so the ancient healing gifts of plants was lost to mankind for evermore. The Druids, descendants of the Atlanteans in Europe, who were and are our holistic healers since the times of Atlantis, carried their teachings and wisdom through generations of holistic herbalists. They describe the green herbs and plants as representing the body of the spirit of nature, the green man. His face is always encompassed by leaves, vines, and flowers, seeming to be literally born from the natural world. When a herbalist gathers herbs and plants, she or he is dismembering the nature spirit, and when using them to provide tinctures, salves, compresses, etc. to the sick, the herbalist is reuniting the lost pieces of the nature spirit and bringing the world back into oneness. This is the remit of the holistic herbalist, to bring the world back into wholeness in the presence of the land, sea, and sky, the three worlds of the ancient Celts, which were associated with, respectively, nature spirits of the land, the ancestors of the seas, and the deities of the sky. The Holistic Herbalist and Earth Festivals of the Sacred Earth Year. Earth Festivals of the Sacred Earth Year. All self-respecting herbalists over time would study plants from growing, cultivating, harvesting, storing, and usage, to astrology and its impact upon the plants, to the seasons, to the spiritual nature of the plant, in order to best decide how to mix and use them. They understood and studied the impact of the plants not only on the physical body, but also on the emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being and development of an individual. Some plants, as you're probably aware, are psychedelics and can take the consumer on a spiritual journey in between realms. But would it be right for everyone to experience this? Would they be ready in some instances to have a dark night of the soul experience? The holistic herbalist would know this, and in order to prescribe this, would have to be in total tune with their subjects. Having highly developed psyches, or being intuitive, and being in tune with the earth, Mother Nature, and the changing seasons was and is the remit of the holistic herbalist. For holistic herbalists, pagans, and druids, the year was, or is, split into 8 earth festivals, each 7 weeks apart. 4 occur in the darkness months, and 4 in the light months. Each important event marks a point of significance for Mother Earth and where she is in her growing cycle. The daylight hours are of importance to all those who work with the earth, but more than that, when the sun, moon, planets are closest to the earth or aligned in a certain way, the impact of their magnetic fields impacts the growth patterns of the plants. Scientists have shown that the magnetic fields that are in the earth impact root growth and cause the roots to grow towards the field as if they are being pulled like magnetic filings. In the chart, you will see the pagan names for each of the growing seasons. Samhain, Imbolc, Bealtaine, Lughnasadh are called the 4 main fire festivals and are referred to as sun festivals by the Celts, which all the holistic herbalists, pagans, and druids use and name the same. The other 4 earth festivals, which intersperse these, have different names used by the druids to the names used by the herbalists and pagans. Now you'll see those words there look nothing like their pronunciation, and I'm very blessed to have an Irish husband who has told me exactly how they should be pronounced, so now you know if you ever see it. The new year starts on the evening before the 1st of November. They describe the day as starting at the point of darkness before the sunrise, hence why you might see some festival dates as having 2 dates. So the Earth's new year starts at sunset on the 31st of October and ends just before sunset the following year on, again, the 31st of October. This starting point is called Samhain. We will go through each of the festivals in turn so that you can see how it relates to you and how you might like to incorporate this into your herbalism practices. Samhain. The Celtic New Year starts on the dark moon of Samhain, which is the night before the 31st of October. This timing of the dark, i.e. new but not visible, moon to start the new year marks a time of no direct solar or reflected lunar input, thereby requiring the earth goddess to give birth in her own right to the new year. This is the festival of death and rebirth. Samhain means end of summer. It marks the end of the agricultural year, but it also means the start of winter. It is the Celtic New Year. It is a festival that honours the dying sun, and in that process honours dead ancestors. It was a celebration of their lives and was not a scary evening. Samhain is the last of the 3 harvest festivals, Lunasa being the first one, which is on the 1st of August, the fall equinox, which is the 21st of September, and then Samhain. And at this time, animals that were needed for winter food would be slaughtered in the old days. They would cure the hides, they would smoke meats, and there would be huge fires to burn waste. The careful selection of stock and seed for the next year is finalised at Samhain. Those that work the earth would do the same. The last of the summer veg would be picked, as any produce left in the garden or fields after this sign was or is said to belong to the nature spirits. The plants that needed protecting for winter would be covered up, and the fires would be lit to burn the garden waste. The fires lit on Samhain were lit to honour the sun god and to mark the death of the summer. They symbolised man's gratitude to the sun energy and was our effort to help the sun on its journey across the skies until its rebirth in spring. The fires would be lit and left to burn out through the night, and were not allowed to be relit until dawn had broken on the new year on the 1st of November. The winter solstice. Solstice is from the Latin and is made up from 2 words, sol, which means sun, and stis, which means stopped. Celtic Druids have their own word for this time, and to them solstice means sun standing still. In the winter, this sun standing still happens around the 21st of December. This is the lowest point of the solar year, and is the point of celebrating the return and birth of the sun from its time in darkness. It is the time when the herbalist starts to wait for the gestation of the seeds and plants that have lain dormant under the cold earth. This sun return was marked by the lighting of bonfires, and the fields, crops and trees were celebrated by a tradition called wassailing. Now, wassailing some of you might have heard of, but it's a very ancient custom that is rarely done today. And the word wassail comes from the Anglo-Saxon phrase wise hail, which means good health. So, as it's something to do with good health, it's got to have a drink involved. So the wassail was a drink made of mulled ale, curdled cream, that sounds gross, roasted apples, eggs, even worse, cloves, ginger, nutmeg and sugar. So basically they drank to the good health of the fields and plants. I don't think people needed much of an excuse to have a drink at this time of year when it was cold. The ceremonial Yule log was the highlight of the festival, and we still see cakes today made at Christmas time to depict the log. In accordance with tradition, the log should be harvested from the householder's land or given as a gift. Some say that a whole tree trunk was brought into the house. Once brought, well, let's hope it was a small tree, huh? Once brought inside, and before being put into the fire, it was decorated with mistletoe and holly, covered with ale, and then dusted with flour. And if you've ever bought a chocolate Yule log from the shop, you'll notice they have a sprig of holly on the top, and they will also be dusted with icing sugar to look the same way. That's why this is where tradition comes from. Then an ember of last year's Yule log was used to set fire the new Yule log. The log would burn through the night and was left to burn for the next 12 days before being extinguished. For this to happen, I'm guessing the log or trunk must have been pretty big. Ash is the traditional wood of the Yule log. As a herb ruled by the sun, ash brings the sun's light into the hearth at the solstice. After the fire was extinguished, the landowners and herbalists would use the ash to bless the earth that their plants were growing in, and they would walk clockwise around their field or their garden, sprinkling the ash and asking for the sun's blessing on their crops for the year ahead. Children at this time went from house to house with baskets made from evergreen branches, which contained gifts of clove-spiked apples called pomanders and flour-dusted stalks of wheat. The pomanders represented the Roman fruit goddess Pomona. Evergreens were used as they represented immortality, evergreens being plants that don't die during Mother Nature's season cycle. The wheat stalks were used to thank Mother Earth for the harvest and were also used as a symbol of good luck and fertility for the year ahead. And the flour was the symbol of alchemy and the creative principle, the magic of changing the wheat into the flour and then eventually into bread. Holly, which holds the masculine energy, and ivy, which holds the feminine energy, not only decorated the outside, but also decorated the inside of the homes, in hopes that the nature spirits would come and join the celebrations. Neither, however, holly or ivy were allowed to be brought into the house before the solstice celebrations. The herbalist would always make sure there was a holly bush planted in the garden. Because of its prickliness, it was thought to capture or ward off evil spirits before they could enter a home or garden and cause harm. The holly leaves, symbolic of the holly king or holy king, represent hope, and the red berries represent potency and fruitfulness of the harvest. Mistletoe, which as I said represents the feminine element, was or is an important part of the winter solstice celebration for herbalist, druid and pagan alike. They believed that its green leaves represented the fertility of the mother goddess, and its white berries the seed of the forest god or oak king. The branches and sprigs were then divided and distributed to be hung over doorways and gateways as protection against thunder, lightning and other evils. Its tradition wasn't traditionally for kissing under. The herbalist would hang his mistletoe around his garden for the same reason, if he didn't have any growing in trees on his plot. Many pagan cultures celebrate this time with many festivals known by a range of names. Saturnalia, Yule, Christmas in the West, Xmas, the Long Night, Lenia, the Festival of the Wild Women, Albanathuren, which is the Druidic name, Serpent Days, Inti Raymi, which is an Inca, Shaba Yalda, Soil, Hopi. The pagan Romans called it Dies Natalis Invicti Solis, the birthday of the unconquered sun, when they honoured the old pagan gods, Apollo, or Attis, or Dionysus, Hercules, Horus, Osiris, Perseus, and Theseus, etc., etc. Quite a significant time of year for all traditions in all cultures. Imbolc, which starts the night of the 1st of February and ends sunset on the 2nd of February, is another major sun festival. It occurs in the time of year which is still considered to be the darkness time. Imbolc means in the bag, but is translated as in the belly, and refers to the season of pregnancy in all things. The expectant ewes with their lambs, the nesting birds with their eggs and coming chicks, the pregnant seeds and plant bulbs in the earth. It is a sun-fire festival, and was significant as it celebrates the return of spring. All is pregnant and expectant. The light is returning to the earth. The days are getting longer, and the spring flowers birth forth from beneath the frost-bitten soil. Mother Earth awakes and brings forth her life force into all of nature. It is a time to celebrate rebirth. It is a traditional time of spring cleaning that, for the herbalist, meant the cleaning and mending of garden tools, pots, and seed sorting in preparation for the growing season. Imbolc also symbolised the first official day of ploughing or digging to prepare the land for sowing. Imbolc is traditionally the great festival and honouring of Bridget. She was known as the great goddess in Celtic legend, the All-Mother. Her name means exalted one, and is given today in Ireland as a name to girls. She is the goddess of women, the keeper of prophecies and dreams, the watcher of the great destinies, the guardian of the future, and goddess of the sun and fire. As the feminine creator, she brings fertility to the land and its people, and is said to watch over newborn babies. To celebrate this day, and to connect her energy with the earth, the herbalist and the people made or make things called Bridget's crosses, which are woven from wheat or even willow to put over the workspace or the potting shed, so that all there would be blessed with her energy, and the seeds of the herbs be blessed with the healing gift of nature that she imbues in them. Imbolc is also called Imbolg, Oimlech, Candlemas, the Feast of Lights, Groundhog Day in the USA, and Bridget's Day. Spring equinox, 21st of March, also called Ostara. Equinox means equal night, and this happens because the sun is positioned over the equator, and at this time of the year, day and night are about equal in length all over the world. It's different to the solstices, so this is the time of equalness. The spring equinox is sometimes referred to as the vernal equinox, and vernal means spring. So together, the vernal equinox means spring, equal night and day. The spring equinox, or vernal equinox, has been an important date for thousands of years. The Great Sphinx, for example, faces precisely eastward. Between the years of 11,000 BC and 9,000 BC, on the vernal equinox, the sun rose against the background of the constellation Leo the Lion, and was the direction to which the face of the Great Sphinx faced. So even 12,000 years ago, the spring equinox was a significant spiritual date. In ancient Rome, the followers of Cybele believed that their goddess had a consort who was born via a virgin birth. His name was Attis, and he died and was resurrected each year during the time of the vernal equinox on the Julian calendar, which is between the 22nd and 25th of March. I don't know if you can see where I'm going with this. The story of the Roman god Mithras is similar to the tale of Jesus Christ and his resurrection. Mithras was born at the winter solstice and was resurrected in spring. Mithras helped his followers ascend to the realm of light after death. In pagan traditions, there is a goddess called Ostara. Her feast day was held on the full moon following the vernal equinox, almost the identical calculation as for the Christian Easter in the West. Ostara was associated with fertility of both humans and crops, and Ostara mated with the solar god on the spring equinox, and 9 months later she gave birth to a child around the winter solstice, at the 21st or 22nd of December. Now, the reason which you might have gathered is why I have listed all these ancient Roman, Egyptian and pagan traditions is that, as you've probably worked out, that the church wove these festivals, which were or are sacred to these cultures, in order to blend the pagan traditions into the church-ruled ones, in order to make their version of religion more acceptable. This was a time to celebrate planting and the new crop season. It is the day spring officially begins. The egg, a symbol of fertility, rebirth and immortality, is seen in nature at this time with the nesting birds, and it was nature's or is nature's signal of the new season. Egg as a gift is nothing new and originates hundreds of years ago. Druids would bury them in fields to invite abundance to the land. The herbalist at the spring equinox would or will make the land fertile by returning to the nature spirit those parts that have died, the mulch, the compost, and ash from fires, reconnecting lost parts of the nature spirit so that she can become whole again to start the growth cycle. Here is a beautiful little garden spring equinox ritual from the Celtic lady Julie Att that you might like to do. The following is a spring equinox ritual that is appropriate for Christians and pagans alike. Stand outdoors at sunrise, forming a circle with those you love. And if you're on your own, imagine you've got a circle of ancestors standing, holding your hands. Put a small tree representing the tree of life, or a shrub in the centre of your circle, or stand around a living tree. Meditate silently together with a sense of awe and wonder about the teeming abundance of life the goddess has created. Tie festive ribbons or attach brightly coloured pieces of paper onto the tree. As you do so, state your intent for yourself, a loved one, the land, the plants, with respect to personal growth or spiritual renewal. End with a prayer of thanksgiving for the miracle that is the continuity of life, and ask that everyone around you might have a bright and blessed spring. The spring equinox is also called Alban Aila by the Druids, Eostar, Ostra, the Feast of Annunciation of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Festival of Trees, Lady Day, Noras, Ostara, Ostra, Rites of Spring, and Easter. Bealtaine, which starts the eve of May the 1st and concludes sunset on May the 1st. It is a sun fire festival and marks the start of the light half of the year. Bealtaine, according to the Celtic Druid temple, means the two fires of Billa and refers to a ritual of purification. As Samhain marks the end of summer of the old year and the start of winter of the new year, Bealtaine marks the end of winter and start of summer. In the past, still observed in Ireland in the 20th century, on the first day of Bealtaine, cattle were driven between two fires for protection from disease, and then they were let into pasture. Sometimes they were made to leap over burning embers, as did the human celebrants. This is still done today. When the bonfire had died down, people would daub themselves with its ashes and sprinkle it over their crops and livestock. Burning torches from the bonfire would be taken home, where they would be carried around the house or boundary of the farmstead and would be used to relight the hearth. These rituals were meant to symbolically burn up and destroy all harmful influences so that the human, cattle and plants were purified and given the best chance of being disease-free and fruitful for the year ahead. Bealtaine was a springtime festival of optimism, during which fertility ritual again was important. It is a time when the earth's reproductive energy is at its strongest, and the maypole, symbolizing the male phallus, was inserted into the Mother Earth symbolizing the uniting of the masculine and feminine energies. There were also rituals to protect crops, dairy products, and people, and to encourage growth. The spirits and fairies were thought to be especially active at Bealtaine, as they are at Samhain, and the goal of many Bealtaine rituals was to appease them. A blessing of the land was led by farmers and herbalists, where each of the 4 cardinal points of the compass were honoured with a small ritual. A similar process to the blessing of the land carried out by shamans and Native Americans in their medicine wheel. Herbalists would grow yellow flowers, such as primrose, rowan, hawthorn, gorse, hazel and marsh marigold, which were placed at doorways and windows. Sometimes loose flowers were strewn at the doors and windows, and sometimes they were made into bouquets, garlands or crosses and fastened to them. They would also be fastened to cows and equipment for milking and butter making. The flowers were used as they are sun herbs ruled by the sun. The May bush and May bough was popular in parts of Ireland. This was a small tree or branch, typically a hawthorn, a rowan, a holly or a sycamore, which was decorated with bright flowers, ribbons, painted shells and so forth. The tree would either be decorated where it stood, or branches would be decorated and placed inside or outside the house. Sometimes a May bush would be paraded through the town. The hawthorn tree was the first choice to be used, as they were seen as sacred trees and were associated with the fairy folk. The custom of decorating a May bush or May tree was found in many parts of Europe, and we have a similar tradition when we decorate the May pole. Now, if you want to take part in a Bealtaine festival and be invited to jump the fire, then come to Glastonbury in England for the Bealtaine celebrations, where you can expect to see painted men and women, flowers and lots of horns on heads. And it's quite a spectacle. The summer solstice. It starts sunset on the 20th of June to sunset on the 21st of June. May the long-time sun shine upon you, all love surround you, and the pure light within you guide your way on. On the summer solstice, ancient monuments throughout the world light up with the magical light of the sun's first rays in the morning, to create light and reflection that is never seen at any other time of year, with the exception of the winter solstice. These monuments are thousands of years old, Stonehenge in England perhaps being one of the most famous for this spectacle. They really have no idea how these monuments were made, let alone how they managed to set up the stones over exact points of crossing ley lines in pinpoint alignment with the sun, stars and planets. Our history lessons seem to have wiped out the possibility that early man was in fact far more intelligent than they are ever given credit for. At midsummer, the sun is at its peak and the daylight hour is at its longest. The summer solstice is again one of the fire/sun festivals, celebrating the tremendous power of the sun being depicted as the giver of life. Sun worship has long existed. In ancient Egypt, the sun god was Ra, and even today we say we are going to do some Ra worship, or we're going to get some rays or some Ras, meaning we're going sunbathing. The sun was known as a powerful pineal gland activator, so its significance as a spiritual life giver as well as a physical life giver was well known by all connected with spiritual growth, and that includes the holistic herbalist. Even today, the medical doctor can recommend getting plenty of fresh air and relaxation in the sun, vital for vitamin D and for lifting our moods as it stimulates serotonin. The summer solstice is a true sun worship festival, honouring the full power, warmth, energy and heat of the sun as a life giver to all living beings and things. At midnight on the solstice, Fires were lit on every hill. People danced around the fires, honouring the sun's force. Trees were decorated with cloths, and the hawthorn trees were decked with flowers and ribbons. This is still done today, and if you visit Avebury or Glastonbury in England, you will often see hawthorn trees with ribbons hanging off them. If you want to experience a real solstice festival, then Stonehenge, the physical representation of the Earth's heart chakra, has a huge organised event every year where some of the Druids are allowed to enter the inner circle of stones to perform their ceremonies. For the herbalists and farmers, the ash from the summer solstice fires was taken to bless the earth and to return the ash remains to the arms of the Mother Nature so that she could become whole again. Lunasa, 1st of August, marks the beginning of the harvesting season and is another sun or fire festival, and it actually marks the last day of summer. The word Lunasa means the games of Lugh. History associates Lunasa with the Lugh, a leading Celtic deity and hero, and this date was a celebration called Lunasa, which means, as we said, the games of Lugh. And it involved great gatherings similar to the ancient Olympic Games that involved religious ceremonies, ritual athletic contests, feasting, matchmaking and trading. There were also visits to holy wells. According to folklorist Mary McNeill, evidence shows that the religious rites included an offering of the first fruits, a feast of the new food and of bilberries, the sacrifice of a bull, and a ritual dance or play in which Lugh seizes the harvest for mankind and defeats the powers of blight. Much of the activities would have taken place on top of hills and mountains. Hills were climbed and the flowers were worn whilst climbing the hill, which were then buried at the summit as a sign that summer was ending. In other places, the first sheaf of the harvest was buried. Lunasa was seen as an especially auspicious time for weddings. But if you didn't want to get married, you were lucky because you could take the trial marriage option. Traditionally at this time, trial marriages were conducted, whereby young couples joined hands through a hole in a wooden door. And the trial marriage lasted a year and a day, at which time the marriage could be made permanent or broken without consequences. Quite handy. At this time the sun is celebrated again as the first fruits of the earth are harvested. The god of the harvest, known as the Green Man, or John Barleycorn, sacrifices himself every year so that the great cycle of life can continue. The first fruits of the harvest are honoured, and gratitude is given for the expected fruitfulness of the remaining harvest as the earth starts to descend towards the cooler times. Lunasa is seen as a time to give thanks to the spirits and deities for the beginning of the harvest season, and to honour them with offerings and prayers, not to harm the still ripening crops. The god Lugh, as we said before, is honoured by many at this time, and gentle rain on the day of the festival is seen as his presence and his bestowing of blessings. Now this is quite likely to happen if you live in Ireland or England in the month of August. The fullness and fulfilment of the present harvest already hold at its very heart the seed of all future harvests. So as the grain harvest is gathered in, there is food to feed the community throughout the winter, and within that harvest is the seed of next year's rebirth, regeneration, and harvest. The grain mother is ripe and full, heavily pregnant. She carries the seed of the New Year's sun god within her. There is tension here, for the sun god, the god of the harvest, the Green Man, or John Barleycorn, surrounds his life with the cutting of the corn. Both the cutting of the first grain and the last grain are significant. The first sheaf of corn would be cut at dawn, ground and baked into the harvest bread, which was then shared by the community in thanks. The first barley stalks would be made into the first beer of the season, and the first sheaf guarantees the seed and thus continuity. The last sheaf was also cut and made into a corn dolly, and carried to the village with festivity, and was central to the harvest supper. And the last sheaf of the harvest would live in the home, often above the fireplace or hearth, until the next harvest. In some way it eventually needed to return to the earth from where it came from, so that the fertilizing spirit of John Barleycorn, the green man or the harvest god, could pass from harvest to harvest. It could be ploughed back, returned to decay and rot, or burnt and the ashes scattered. Today, if you want to experience a real Lunacy festival, visit Kilorglin in County Kerry in Ireland for the Puck Fair, which is held each year in early August. At the beginning of the 3-day festival, a wild goat is brought into the town and crowned king, while a local girl is crowned queen. Doesn't sound like much of a great match, does it? The festival includes traditional music and dancing, a parade, arts and crafts, workshops, a horse and cattle fair and a market, and it draws a great number of tourists each year. Autumn equinox, also known as the fall equinox or Marbon by the Druids. Equinox means equal night, and this happens at the equator because the sun is positioned above the equator, and at this time of the year, day and night are about equal in length at the equator. This also happens, as we discussed, at the spring equinox. The autumn equinox is sometimes referred to as the fall equinox. Fall means leaf fall. So together, the fall equinox means leaf fall equal night and day. This is the start of the dark half of the Earth's sacred year. It's interesting that in the USA, as those of you who live there will know, that autumn is referred to as the fall. This is a time of balance, night and day, dark and light, and we are now at a point of change as the darkness starts to take over the light. The earth makes plans to go to sleep. The plants make their last flowers, and the sap of trees returns back to their roots deep in the earth, changing the green of summer to the fire of autumn, to the flaming reds, oranges, and golds. We are returning to the dark from whence we came. The god of the harvest, the green man, is again honoured, and fruit is laid at the base of the trees as a gift for the dryads, the tree spirits who dwells within. Thou light-winged dryad of the trees, in some melodious plot of beechen green and shadows numberless, singest of summer in full-throtted ease. This is the second harvest of the year, referred to as the fruit harvest, and the feast of Thanksgiving in the USA. In Europe today, it is time to celebrate with a harvest festival. The harvest festival is held in all schools and churches, and is a modern-day leftover from this great pagan druidic tradition. Here the goddess is honoured as the harvest queen, and the green man who has valiantly given his life with the cutting of the last harvest plants is honoured. Nature awaits his rebirth in the spring. Internally, for the holistic herbalist, it is time to reflect on our own life cycle of growth, harvest, death, and rebirth mirrored in nature. As we consciously link our awareness to nature's cycles, our understanding of our own cycles begins to deepen. On the fall equinox, you may want to honour abundance and shift your consciousness from one of lack to one of abundance in some way through a small ritual or ceremony, such as lighting a candle, giving thanks, and speaking your gratitude for all that you are and all that you have. John Barleycorn by Robert Burns. There was 3 kings into the east, 3 kings both great and high, and they have sworn a solemn oath John Barleycorn should die. They took a plough and ploughed him down, put clods upon his head, and they hae sworn a solemn oath John Barleycorn was dead. And the cheerful spring came kindly on, and showers began to fall. John Barleycorn got up again, and sore surprised them all. The sultry suns of summer came, and he grew thick and strong, his head weel armed with pointed spears, that no one should him wrong. The sober autumn entered mild, when he grew wan and pale. His bending joints and drooping head showed he'd begun to fail. His colour sickened more and more, he faded into age, and then his enemies began to show their deadly rage. They've taken a weapon long and sharp, and cut him by the knee, then tied him fast upon a cart like a rogue for forgery. They laid him down upon his back, and cudgelled him full sore. They hung him up before the storm, and turned him o'er and o'er. They filled up a darksome pit with water to the brim. They heaved in John Barleycorn, there let him sink or swim. They laid him out upon the floor, to work him further woe, and still, as signs of life appeared, they tossed him to and fro. They wasted o'er a scorching flame the marrow of his bones, but a miller used him worst of all, for he'd crushed him between two stones. And they had taken his very heart's blood, and drank it round and round, and still the more and more they drank, their joy did more abound. John Barleycorn was a hero bold, of noble enterprise, for if you do but taste his blood, 'twill make your courage rise. 'Twill make a man forget his woe, 'twill heighten all his joy, 'twill make the widow's heart to sing, though the tear were in her eye. Then let us toast John Barleycorn, each man a glass in hand, and may his great posterity ne'er fail in old Scotland. Some other points of interest. Another ancient earth ceremony was the practice of blessing the farmlands with menstrual blood by the female herbalist or wise woman. The blood was held sacred, as was earth, fertility, and sexuality. It was believed that as the great Father Mother created the cosmos and the earth, that through the sacred blood of menstruation, women were drawing on that creative principle and blessing the land for good crop growth. We can reflect that the cycle of fruitfulness within a woman reflects the great cycles of the moon and the sun, as well as earth's wonderful rhythmic fruitfulness. This, it is said, will help us to bring healing and beauty back into our view of menstruation. The Holistic Herbalist and Astrology. About. Man is a microcosm, or a little world, because he is an extract from all the stars and planets of the whole firmament, from the earth and the elements, and so he is their quintessence. Paracelsus. The earth and every living thing in the waters, the earth and air were born from the stars. Scientists tell us that everything we are and everything in the universe and on earth originated from stardust, and it continually floats through us even today. It directly connects us to the universe, rebuilding our bodies over and over again through lifetimes. All the material in our bodies originates with that residual stardust, and it finds its way into plants, and from there into the nutrients that we need for everything we do, think, move, or grow. The holistic herbalist has an awareness of this, and so herbs can be classified by their planetary sphere of influence. It is said that the ancient herbalists received their plant wisdom from the stellar genii, that's plural of the word genie, and that in the centre of each star or planet there is a temple where the genie resides. In order to enter into that temple, to converse with the stellar genie, to retrieve its wisdom, the true holistic herbalist had to be true of heart. When we understand the planet's sphere of influence over the human body, mind, spirit, and emotion, then we understand the vibrations inherent in the plant. By knowing this, when we ingest or use the plant, either topically or internally, we are connecting to the planetary influences and can do so in more of a conscious way. On a simple level, before we delve into this deeply, who doesn't feel uplifted when they've been in the sun? I know I certainly do. Then it wouldn't surprise you to know that plants that are under the rule of the sun support you to feel an overall sense of wellness. It's simple to understand when you know. For the herbalist, we only work with the influences of what are referred to as the 7 classical planets, of which the moon and sun are described as being part of. The definition came from classical antiquity, as those moving objects in the sky which were visible to the naked eye. Solar plants, ruled by the sun. Solar herbs, as you would expect, are yellow, orange, reddish-orange and pink. Body structures ruled by the solar energies are the heart, circulation, eyes, spine, body heat, the thymus gland and the pons varoli, which, at only 2.5 centimeters in length, is the bridge between various parts of the nervous system, including the cerebellum and cerebrum, which are both parts of the brain. The sun also rules the spleen, which feeds its energy into the solar plexus, the seat of our power and life force. When we are depleted emotionally, we experience physical symptoms around the solar plexus area. And for those that work with chakras, you will know that our solar plexus chakra will also be depleted at this time. For the earth, the sun plays a vital role as giver of life. Its strong magnetic fields emit charged particles which are carried through the solar system by solar winds. Without its light and heat, nothing would exist. Diseases often associated with needing sun plant remedies would be emotional depletion, structural issues, and circulatory issues. On a spiritual level, solar plants are assisted by the elemental beings called sylphs. They are known as air spirits and resemble feminine humans with wings. They say, "Where real worth is hidden, there the sun's rays shine." They are wise and remember the rituals and religions of the stars and the ancient wisdom held in the Akashic records. Sun energy plants can support us with the spiritual development of our inner power, being able to refine our ego so that our sense of self we project into the world is at its best. We can shine our true nature, and we can spread that inner ray of sunlight touching those we meet. Sun people are those with a sunny disposition. You will know them. They are optimistic, happy, and joyful, qualities that the solar herbs support us with. Some of the herbs ruled by the sun are angelica, rosemary, eyebright, marigold, heart trefoil, chamomile, ginger, mustards, sunflower, as you would expect, juniper, etc. And the trees are the bay tree, the olive tree, the walnut tree, the ash tree, and dragon's blood. Lunar plants, ruled by the moon. Lunar-ruled plants are pale in colour and always live within or near water. They tend to have white or yellowish flowers and soft, fleshy leaves which are often quite large. And if you think of a lily, you can have an image of that in your mind. a water lily. The moon is connected with the element of water and our emotional body. Its electromagnetic pull affects the tides, and the strength of the full moon frequencies can increase epileptic seizures, can bring on menstruation, affects fertility, affects our sleep pattern, and is often associated with sending people a little crazy, hence the tales of the werewolves. Being physiologically connected with water, the moon rules all bodily secretions and their associated organs: blood, urine, pancreatic fluid, tears, hormone secretions, etc., and the related organs being womb, bladder, eyes, brain, pancreas, glands, stomach, eyes, and nose. Ailments often associated with needing moon plant energy are about bringing balance and order. For example, epilepsy or recurrent digestive issues, recurrent bladder issues, irregular menstruation, etc. On a spiritual level, lunar plants are associated by the water elemental beings called undines, nymphs, nereids, and mermaids. The aquatic plants are the physical realms of these beings. They possess a deep Neptunian wisdom and build their homes within the water dimensions and work at purifying the water so that all may benefit, as do the water plants. The moon-ruled plants connect us deeply with our psyche and its spiritual expansion. They take us to a place of peace and contemplation, or can take us deep into the void to contemplate our soul's destiny. Papaver somniferum, or as it's more commonly known, the opium poppy, is unsurprisingly one of the lunar-ruled herbs. Moon herbs connect us with the divine feminine and all her qualities of emotional balance, intuition, psychic gifts and talents, creativity and nurture. Some lunar herbs are Irish moss, chickweed, opium poppy, lettuce, gourds, moonwort, nutmeg, periwinkle, water lily, iris, and trees that are aligned are eucalyptus, willow, fringe, Japanese tree, and mahogany. Mercurian herbs, ruled by Mercury. Mercury-ruled herbs tend to affect thought and the nervous system, and usually have finely divided leaves, reflecting the division of the nerves and nerve endings. They are usually highly fragranced, and many of our more common herbs come under the rulership of this planet. Mercury, as well as being a planet, was revered as a god in ancient Rome. He was one of the 12 deities. There were 6 female goddesses and 6 male gods, though this practice actually dates back to 1600 BC, before ancient Rome, with 12 gods and goddesses, 12 zodiac signs, 12 names of heavenly bodies, and 12 months of the year, etc., etc. And today we still have months in our year named after gods. The planet probably received this name because it moves so quickly through the sky. The ancient Greeks actually thought that Mercury was 2 planets, and they called it Apollo when it was visible in the morning sky, and Hermes when it was seen after sunset. It is the planet of communication and rules over upper body areas, the brain, the nerves, the lungs, throat, tongue, thyroid, vocal cords, and sight. It is responsible for the corpus callosum, which is a large C-shaped white matter that divides the cerebral cortex into the right and left hemispheres. It is said that when someone achieves spiritual mastery in their lifetime, they bring their male and female brain into balance, and the corpus callosum then unites and fires simultaneously across both hemispheres, so that there is a totality of unified thinking, uniting the feminine brain attributes of emotional balance, intuition, and creativity, with male brain attributes of physical action, logic, reasoning, and personal power. On a spiritual level, working with herbs under this planetary rule, you are connecting specifically with the throat chakra and the ability to open yourself up as a channel of wisdom. You are also working at expressing your true sense of self out into the world, whether that is through birthing a new idea, expressing yourself artistically or musically, or in any way that expresses who you truly are. People who don't follow their true path that brings them happiness often have physical problems around the ear, nose and throat areas. Remember, through doing what makes you happy, you are following a path that you are being guided towards. So if teaching surfing or fishing or making cakes makes you happy, you will find there is a path to creating an energetic exchange in that process. And I refer to money as energy here. Mercury-ruled herbs would be acrimony, anise, lavender, bittersweet, caraway, carrot, celery, dill, fennel, garlic, fenugreek, valerian, parsley, oregano, mercury, though poisonous, wormwood, lily of the valley, also poisonous. And the trees would be myrtle, pomegranate, mulberry and ironwood. And all this information is in your notes, so you don't need to take notes in a hurry while I'm saying this. Venus-ruled plants. Plants ruled by the planet Venus tend to have beautiful flowers with strong, sweet scents. The berry family also comes under her rulership, and these herbs are associated with love, passion, sexual energy, and matters of the heart. She is the morning and evening star and shines brightest in our skies. She is associated with deities of love, female sexuality, motherhood, fertility, and many ancient Venus-type figures. Aphrodite, Ishtar, Ketesh, Serket, and many others were revered as embodying the energy of Venus in physical form. The Venus symbol consists of a circle with a small cross below it. In botany and biology, it is used to represent the female sex, alongside the astrological symbol for Mars representing the male sex. And Venus, believe it or not, in some traditions is represented as being a male energy. Physiologically, Venus rules, as you might expect, the sexual organs, the genitals, the uterus, the ovaries, testes, prostate, kidneys, bladder, urinary systems, and breasts. Venus also rules over those relevant bodily secretions, sexual hormones, thymus gland, digestive juices, and urine. Her rule of authority extends to the skin too, so that we have that inner glow of beauty. On an emotional level, the herbs and plants under her rule are very strongly connected with the vibration of love, affection, harmony, self-worth. And on a converse level, those who are emotionally upset, disconnected, depressed, and grief-stricken are said to benefit from these plants for their positive effects. Working with the spiritual aspects of Venus-ruled plants means that you're working with the 3 different vibrations of love and the heart chakra, that being love, unconditional love, and compassion. In order to achieve spiritual mastery and to open up the 3 chambers of the heart chakra, you need to embody and learn all 3 aspects. Spiritually, the energy of Venus brings us into universal harmony. We learn that we are all part of one whole life system and neither is separate from the other. Venus also connects us with the gift of healing. And when we can heal our own hearts, then we can give that healing out to others just by being who we are. I'm sure you all know people who just radiate love and whose energy you just love being around. Children are a great example of this. I also have some very great herbalist friends and farmer friends who hold that very centered, heart-based energy, which is very beautiful and very stabilizing to be around, is kind of the word I'd like to use. The herbs associated with Venus play a varying role, but fit into 3 main categories: aphrodisiacs and balancing of the female system, herbs that are tonic and cleansing of the skin, and tonics for kidneys and the urinary tract. Some herbs ruled by Venus would be the berries, as you might expect: blackberry, strawberry, beans, gooseberry, catmint, cowslip, daffodil, daisy, rose, as you would expect, the lily, elder, foxglove, which is poisonous, by the way, hollyhock, also poisonous, lentil, marshmallow, mint, mugwort, orchid, and plantain. And the trees would be, the fruit trees are plum tree, apple tree, cherry tree, peach tree, and pear tree. Plants ruled by Mars and the fire elementals. Plants which are influenced by Mars, as you would expect, are fiery, sour, bitter, and spicy. They generally have thorns or prickles, and others produce irritation when they're touched. Commonly, the flowers reflect the red, orange, fiery colours of the planet, and their nature and function reflects that too. Mars, as I'm sure you know, is the domain of the god of war, and heroes over time who embodied the Mars energy were Joan of Arc, Kali, Odin, and Vulcan. Though Mars can be a destructive energy, its energy can be used to bring the fire of purpose, righteousness, and truth for good. If you harness this energy for good, then you will achieve great things. Harness it for bad, and you will create destruction. Physiologically, the domain for plants ruled by Mars is the muscles, arteries, blood, bile, gallbladder, and you'll think of the phrase, you've got some gall, adrenal glands, genitals, head, left brain, sexual energies again, but these are all what I would call warrior systems. They also work with physical strength and vitality in prevention of injuries and against blood or immune system weaknesses. On an emotional level, they support internal fire, drive, willpower, sex drive, and the ability to ground. On the flip side, when someone is too much in their Mars power, they are, as you would expect, fiery, aggressive, stressy, can have high blood pressure, experience heart arrhythmia or mood swings. The Mars plant's spiritual inhabitants are the fire elemental guardians called salamanders. Salamanders are fire spirits, and they bring the flame of change to the nature of plant. But beware, misuse these plants and they have a sting in their tail. They work specifically with our glandular system, our internal fire, and keeping our heat balanced. Spiritually, the Mars plants feed your primeval life force. They filter the element of fire and endurance to support you in your goals. They support the development of your Kundalini fire, which rests at the base of your spine, and they support the refinement in the use of your sexual energy. Sexual energy is one of our most powerful spiritual connection energies, and so many have no idea how to use it. It is worth exploring if you find this subject interesting. As a general rule, Mars plants are those that heat and stimulate. Herbs ruled by Mars are, as you might expect, thistle, mustard, nettle, onion, pepper, dandelion leaf, cactus, chive, tobacco, etc. And the trees are the box, the hawthorn, and the pine. Jupiter ruled herbs. Jupiter is often referred to as the guardian of the Earth, as its electromagnetic field protects anything from outside getting to the Earth. The Jupiter-ruled plants are sweet and soft with a subtle aroma. They, like Venus-ruled plants, incorporate nutritious edible fruits and nuts. Think olives, figs, nuts. Some plants are under the rule of 2 planets, as is the case of some you'll find listed here. Jupiter plants are often bright, yellow and bitter, i.e. bile-producing, as their sphere of influence is the liver. Jupiter, the largest planet in our solar system, is a gas giant, 2.5 times in mass bigger than any other planet in our solar system. It has an enormous magnetosphere which impacts us here on Earth, and also has 79 moons with their own electromagnetic fields. Its energy is connected with deities of storms, sky, wind, fatherhood, so think of Zeus or Vishnu, etc. In Roman mythology, Jupiter, or Jove, was a sky god. He was considered the great protector who supports the hero on a path of righteousness, integrity, duty, spiritual honour, and duty towards state and family. He He was the overseer of ceremony, especially oaths and treaties, and the most ancient and sacred form of marriage, confarreatio, which took place in the presence of his priest. Jupiter rules the liver and digestive system and all the body processes and organs involved in that process: the stomach, kidney, spleen, pancreas, intestinal tract, fatty tissues, Leyden glands, adrenal glands, insulin and glycogen production, hormones, corticosteroid hormones, and epinephrine production that maintains blood pressure and regulates metabolism. The adrenal glands, which are located on top of each kidney, like many other glands, work hand in hand with the hypothalamus and pituitary gland, which is the main sphere of Jupiter's influence. On a mental and emotional level, when the Jupiter-ruled areas are out of balance, there can be weight issues like obesity and anorexia. The liver area is where it is said that we process or hold the emotion of anger, resulting in behaviours such as alcohol and substance abuse, and I consider food abuse in that as well as a volatile temper. The liver processes so much of the toxins in our blood on a physical level that it is one of our most important organs to keep healthy. On a spiritual level, creative thought received from the universe radiates to us from Jupiter. Jupiter supports us to have an optimistic outlook on life, to be expansive in our thinking, to have faith, to live in integrity with a sense of purpose and duty. It works directly with the pituitary gland, which is connected to our crown chakra, connecting us again to higher consciousness, an awareness of the self as part of the cosmic whole, and an awareness that there is a universal consequence to our actions here on Earth. Our Jupiter-ruled herbs are grapefruit, hart's tongue, hawthorn fruit, hops, hydrangea, hyssop, Irish moss, juniper berries, licorice root, milk thistle, peppermint, nutmeg, mint, etc., etc. There's lots under this rule. And Jupiter-ruled trees, some of them are walnut, oak, poplar, and olive. Saturn-ruled herbs. Saturnian herbs are often characterized by an unpleasant smell. They can have acidic fruits, they can be poisonous, and often have dark-coloured leaves. They reproduce themselves without seeds generally, as their root structures are invasive, think ground elder, and can have a rough texture. They like to grow in cold and dry locations, like mountains, and are often referred to as cooling plants, very much like the cold nature of Saturn. The psychedelic plants are in this category, reflecting Saturn's deep mystical side. Saturn, characterized by its rings, is a cold planet with many moons, the most famous of which is Titan. Saturn was represented through time as the god of agriculture, and also by the archetypes of magic, time, and darkness. Think Hecate, Set, Azrael, etc. Saturn is very much an internalizing planet. He holds the energy he creates for himself, without benefiting much else in the solar system. He holds the wisdom of cosmic knowledge within. Rudolf Steiner, in his lectures on the spiritual natures of plants, refers to Saturn as Saturn presents himself to us as the heavenly individuality who has steadfastly participated in whatever has come to pass in our planetary system and has faithfully preserved it in his cosmic memory. He is silent about the cosmic present. He receives the things of the cosmic present into himself and works upon them in his life of spirit and soul. On a physical level, the Saturn plants deals with aging processes, those surrounding deterioration of bones, arthritis, structure, teeth, circulation, the excretory systems, rheumatism, sexual drive, and memory. Diseases of Saturn also cover phobias and OCD, which in some way are caused by an excessive need to control. This can also lead to hypertension and excess acid in the fluid systems of the body. On an emotional and mental level, Saturn influences over our ability to self-discipline and self-awareness, and our ability to let go emotionally of what no longer serves us. As a planet of self-regulating order, it influences our ability to be organized in our thoughts, emotions, and processes. The elemental beings of the Saturn-ruled plants are the gnomes, the earth spirits, who build their homes in the woods, mountains, and forests away from human interference. They live in families, and their remit is to keep the earth clean, which is not an easy job nowadays. On a spiritual level, this means that Saturn elementals support us in the process of grounding, the ability to be present in the moment, the ability to ground new ideas and concepts into our reality. Connecting with these Saturn-influenced plants and their elemental beings brings the consumer a connection to Mother Earth and her elements, usually at times when they are energetically depleted. Walking in Mother Nature at these times is a wonderful way to get an energetic recharge from the elemental elements of the earth, the energetic grid, and also to help you feel more connected and present with all that is. Saturn-ruled herbs are amaranthus, belladonna, bittersweet nightshade, blackthorn, fenugreek, iris, and hemp. Saturn-ruled trees, some of them, are yew, pine, and beech. So are you ready to be bamboozled by a bit of science? Excuse me, I've got my glasses on, it's the science section. So, plants and sacred geometry, looking at the golden ratio, phi, spelt P-H-I, and the Fibonacci sequence. Sacred geometry is the meeting of science and spirituality, the blueprint, the structure of space-time that organizes matter. It is an ancient science that explores and explains the language or building blocks of all things in our universe, or why things grow the way they do. All phenomena, from the infinitely small to the infinitely big, the growth of plants, human body proportions, the structure of the universe, the structure of the solar system, the DNA, light, music, and much, much more, has a specific geometric structure. Everything in the universe follows the same geometric pattern that fractals over and over again, creating endless possibilities of light, colour, shape, and sound. Every motion, system of growth, cell, plant, animal, star, galaxy, and black hole are all ruled by mathematical laws or sacred geometry. Ancient cultures around the world have used this mystery school knowledge to create pyramids, churches, ancient buildings of worship, and monuments. Throughout nature, whether this is the DNA or the proportions of the body or the proportions of animals, plants, music, architecture and art, the solar system, and even the stock market and population growth, there exists a magical ratio called phi. It's not the same as the pi that you learnt at maths at school. Phi spelled P-H-I. Phi, which is represented as a never-ending number, a bit like our pi, but phi starts with a 1.6. It is simply an irrational number, but with some very amazing, unusual mathematical properties. The ratio or proportion determined by phi was known to the Greeks as the dividing the line in the extreme and mean ratio, and to Renaissance artists such as Michelangelo as the divine proportion. It is also called the golden section, the golden ratio, and the golden mean. On a really simple level, it shows the phi structure as existing in all living things. for example, in the human body. And I'm going to demonstrate it on myself. If you take the measurement of your head and you multiply it by 1.6, you get the exact length from the top of your head to the top of your shoulders. So in my body and in your body is you see this, what we call phi, or golden mean ratio. Then again, if I take the measurement from the top of my head to the top of my shoulders and I multiply it by phi, my 1.6, I get a measurement, an exact point from there to my waist. So my body is in proportion with phi. If I take the same measurement from here to my waist and multiply it by 1.6, I get the length of my head down to the top of my thighs. And if I take that measurement again and multiply it by the 1.6, by the phi, I get my complete height from top to bottom. Now that sounds quite amazing, doesn't it? But that number, that magical phi number, exists everywhere in your body, as it does in nature. So I'm going to demonstrate that on my hand. So on my hand, I have my top digit, my top part of my finger bone. And if I multiply that by 1.6, I get the length from the top finger joint to the second finger joint, just like that. And if I use my phi again, I get, multiply that by 1.6, I get the length of my total finger from the top to the bottom. And then guess what? It happens again in my body. If I take the length of that, which is 1.6, and then again, if I take the length of my finger and multiply it by 1.6, I get the length from the top of my finger to the bottom of my hand here. Isn't that amazing? And then we go again. If I take my hand, and I take the length of my hand from here to here, and I take that up my arm and multiply it by 1.6, guess what? I get the total length from here, tip of my finger, to my elbow. And this exists in your face, it exists in your feet, and this divine proportion, or this creative principle, if you like, exists not only in the human body, it exists in animals, it exists in plants, and it was considered sacred geometry because it was about understanding, if you like, the building blocks of the universe. So the building blocks of our universe were based, or are based, on those numbers, on that phi, or on that golden ratio. Now in plants, it's expressed specifically as something called the Fibonacci series. Now you might have heard of it. It's not a it's not a TV series you might watch on Netflix. It's a scientific way of showing the principle of the golden ratio and how it works in plants. And if you're working as a holistic herbalist and watching your plants grow, you can see this God principle, if you like, playing out within your plants as they're growing. And the next bit's really quite fascinating. So plant growth is governed by the Fibonacci series, which can be understood as a law of accumulation. Instead of growing in a linear formation of 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, evolution is by nature essentially exponential. So the role of the Fibonacci sequence in the growth of plants is an intriguing example of the unifying order behind all creation. As an example of exponential growth, let's start with the growth of leaves on a plant. Now this happens with all plants, so it's not just unique to one plant. So first the plant, it's a little seedling, it produces one leaf, and then it grows another one. 1 plus 1 equals 2 leaves. Then the plant, which follows the Fibonacci sequence of growth, now has 2 leaves, and it looks to the last number of leaves it grew, which was 1 leaf, and it says, oh, I should have 3 leaves by now, as I'm following the universal principle of growth, and it grows another one. 1 plus 2 equals 3 leaves. Then the plant, which follows the Fibonacci sequence of growth, now has 3 leaves, and it looks to the last number of leaves it grew, which was 2, and it says, oh, I should have 5 leaves by now, as I'm following the universal principle of growth, and it grows another 2. 2 plus 3 is 5, and so on. 3 plus 5 is 8, and so on. 5 plus 8 is 13, and so on. 13 plus 8 is 21, and so on. 13 plus 21 is 34. 21 plus 34 is 55. And this sequence is also depicted in a curve called the Fibonacci curve, which depicts this universal pattern of growth which can be seen throughout nature. Now, what's really interesting about that is if we look at the principle of how the plant grows its leaves, and we then look at that using that phi dividing ratio that I was showing you that exists in the human body, you can see phi exists within the plants. So, for example, every time it grows to its next leaf level, if we divide it by the amount of leaves it had before it grew, you will see that at every stage the plant is increasing its leaves according to the 1.6 phi ratio. So there we are seeing that division and growth which exists in plants too. It's quite amazing, isn't it? And that phi ratio, that sacred geometry, is found in the pyramids. It's found in relationship between the radius of the Earth and the distance between the Earth and the centre of the Moon. It's really one of those amazing, what they call sacred geometry moments. But it's also scientific as well. But what's governing the principle? And as a holistic herbalist, it's really interesting to know that as a creator yourself, that you're actually working with this, we would call it sacred geometry, but it's also referred to as like the God principle or the creative principle as your plants are growing. I hope you find that interesting. There's lots of extra material that you might like to read up on about that. Some of it can be a bit mind-blowing. As I'm a teacher myself, I like to make sure I can understand something first before I teach it. And I hope I've explained that in the simplest way that I can. I hope you enjoyed that. The Holistic Herbalist and Animism. Animism is the belief that all things have a spirit or soul, including animals, plants, rivers, mountains, stars, the moon and the sun. Our more ancient ancestors were, by necessity, ecologically literate people who maintained conscious dialogues with the animals, plants, rivers, weather, and other forces upon which their lives depended. Earth reconnection is learnable, nourishing for our spirits, and an essential part of our humanity. When the holistic herbalist collects plants from nature or their garden, they will often ask for permission and thank the plant for its gifts. Some even leave offerings for the spirit of the plant. When we work using planetary times and days, we are working under the spirit of that planet. Animism is everywhere in the craft. Today, animism continues in most tribal religious movements, in Shinto, in Eastern religions such as Buddhism and Hinduism, and in pagan, neo-pagan, Druidic movements. In addition to believing inanimate objects have spirits, many believe in revering the spirits of ancestors who have an influence on those who are living. This is a noted practice in Shinto and forms of Native American spirituality, among others. Plants will respond to your touch, your emotions, your voice, and even your thoughts. Enjoy the next lecture to find out more. Do plants have emotions or a consciousness? Plants are amazing. Science has proven that they can sense at any one time 20 different chemical and physical parameters in real time. No animal is able to do the same. So I'm going to show you 4 pictures and I'm going to ask you what you see afterwards. So this is actually a really easy psychological test. Nearly everyone says that they see a deer or a frog or people, etc. But all the slides actually have one thing in common, which you might not have realised, and that is they are 80% plants. But our brain is filtering out all these plants, and it's a well-known feature of our brain actually called plant blindness, which is the inability to see or notice plants in the environment. And it's kind of a tool that protects our brain from being overloaded with a lot of unneeded information about the green environment around us. Now, as a species, we evolved in the forest, and it was more important for us to be aware of humans and animals and predators and not to be overloaded with external plant noise. And you might, you can appreciate that. Sometimes you go into a busy cafe, you're going to meet somebody, and you'll be able just to focus on the person you're meeting, and you will cut out the noise of everybody else around you. So this is kind of a similar thing, but it's called plant blindness, and it actually is a thing. So today this is a problem because plant blindness prevents us really from realising that 99.7% of the biomass of our planet is made by plants. The life of the planet is actually a green life, and all the animals and humans make up just 0.3% of the biomass. And it's quite unbelievable that we don't really understand how all these plants work, and in many cases we underestimate the amazing abilities of plants. So let's have a look how a plant is made. So a plant is something called a sessile organism, which means it can't move from one place to another, but they can move a lot. Now, being a sessile organism also means that they have no organs, which is an unbelievable difference between them and animals, and humans. Animals and humans concentrate specific functions in specific organs, i.e. we have eyes to see, a stomach to digest, legs to run, etc. But the plants evolved to not have any organs, as having organs would be too dangerous for plants as they are predated, i.e. they're eaten by animals. I mean, if you could imagine just having a little bit of your brain eaten, it would kill you, but plants, the top can be nibbled and off it grows again. This is why they have no organs, but it doesn't mean they don't have functions, and you'll find out as we go through this. Plants can see without eyes, they can hear without ears, they can taste and smell and breathe without the organs that we have. They can make calculations, memorize and learn, and they really do, without a brain. Plants can't move physically from one place to the next, but they move a lot. If you think of the flowers, they open in the sun and they close when it's dark, or like a pine cone would close in water and open in the hot air to dry. It's like a protection. Of course, there are also active movements like the Venus flytrap, which, as some of you are aware, is actually a carnivorous plant. I think it's the plant way of getting back at humans for having eaten them. But many of the plant movements can be seen just by using a time-lapse camera. And if you look at this beautiful young bean growing, the graceful movements as it swells and grows up, it looks almost like a ballerina. And then if we also look at these seeds all growing together, they're moving as they grow, and it's an important part of their social life. They're learning how to stay together, and as they move together, they're communicating about which direction they should be going. Are we going left, guys? Are we going right, guys? And you can see them swaying as they move. Wonderful, huh? The power of our words and emotions upon plants and all living things. What you're about to see is the impact of words and emotions on plants. It was created by IKEA as part of their Stop Bullying campaign, and it really is quite powerful and is something that you can recreate yourself at home. And there are many other examples of people who've done similar experiments on YouTube. And the reason for that video, as I'm sure you've worked out, is that it's the impact of words on seemingly inanimate objects who can't verbalise a response. And obviously the idea of this, or the implication behind this, is that our words to each other as human beings also have the same kind of impact on us. So very powerful. So next time you feel like saying something nice to your plants, remember they love the emotion behind positive vibes like we all do. So there is nothing wrong with going into your garden or sitting next to your pot plant and rubbing the leaves, tickling the flowers and telling the flower or the plant what a wonderful plant it is. Do plants have memories? Dr. Cleve Baxter and Sentient Plants. And this excerpt is from a news article. Dr. Cleve Baxter, a scientist, decided to hook up a plant he had to a lie detection machine. Now, in human subjects, a polygraph measures three things: the pulse, the respiration rate, and galvanic skin response, otherwise known as perspiration. If you're worried about being caught in a lie, your levels will spike or dip. And Baxter wanted to induce a similar anxiety in the plant, so he decided to set one of its leaves on fire. Before he could even get a match to light, the polygraph registered an intense reaction on the part of the Dracana that he'd connected the sensor to. To Baxter, the implication was as indisputable as it was unbelievable. Not only had the plant demonstrated fear, it had also read his mind. Baxter concluded that plants had some undiscovered sense, he called it primary perception, that could detect and respond to human thoughts and emotions. He then dropped shrimp into boiling water, and the plant, again connected to the machine, appeared to register the shrimp's distress. Was the plant demonstrating some kind of sentient, even telepathic awareness? In this next experiment, Baxter wanted to demonstrate that the plants had a consciousness and a memory of what happened around it. A plant is able to remember something for up to 40 days, it has been shown. In the test you're about to watch, he's going to take 2 monkey plants and hook them up to a polygraph. Their baseline response is a flat line. He's then, using 4 volunteers, going to randomly choose one of them to kill one of the 2 plants whilst they are next to each other. So yes, plants do have feelings, and how you handle and treat them is a very important part to your work as a herbalist. When you next need to cut a bush or pull up plants, a nice gesture is to do it with gratitude to the plant and always leave something that can regrow or move the plant to a new spot. Plants are able to memorize and to learn. It is possible to teach a mimosa-sensitive plant not to close anymore when there is a known danger and stimulus. And the sensitive plant is able to hold the memory for at least 40 days. 40 days is a lot. In the insect world, it is just 24 hours. For most adults, 40 days is a lot, never mind. Never mind 24 hours. So the intelligence and consciousness of plants is a real biological phenomenon. And beautiful to think that they are aware and conscious of far more than we ever thought that they were. So they're not just green growing things minding their own business. They're minding everything else and everybody else's business as well.